My dear friends, we are here again on Chapter 5 of the History of Croatia and its link with Western culture. Today we're going to talk since 1875, where we left it in the previous presentation, to 1945 till the end of the Second World War. So, as always, picking up where we left at Napoleon expansion. Remember that after the Congress of Vienna, this is going to be the result of the new redistribution of all the countries or all the states. And so we arrive at the 20th century and to our talk. Remember we left with the terror blowout at La Alquitrana in Venezuela. Well, that was a symbol, as I told you before. But really, when the First World War began in 1914, is when a large scale of oil production began. It didn't begin in 1875. It was very slow, but it increased a lot with the First War. Remember we left Croatia as a member of Austro-Hungarian Empire. Remember that my pet helps me, my beautiful female dog, helps me in this presentation. She's now dressing like an Austrian here. This is only a little bit of a joke. She helps me because I think that this enriches the presentation. So we are Austro-Hungarian. What was the situation at the start of the First War? 1914. Well, it was called the Armed Peace. The Armed Peace was several countries did alliances to be enoughly strong to discourage the other group. So there were two great groups. What is called the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austro-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente that is called between Great Britain, France, and Russia, at least originally. What was the drop that passed the glass, as we say in Spanish? What happened that was the disencadenant factor? It was the assassination of the Archduke of Austria, Francis Ferdinand, at the hands of Serbian radical groups. So this was the situation. German, Austro-Hungarians, Italian against Great Britain, France, and Russians. This assassination happened in Sarajevo, actual capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And these are images, original images. When they came out, they got in a vehicle, and then they were shot by this Serbian young man, considered by the Serbians a big hero. Anyway, that began the war. Austria-Hungary declared the war to Serbia, Germany did to Russia, Great Britain to Germany, and so on. Italy, remember, that was allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary, did not enter the war until 1915. Based on secret agreements in London, Italy abandons the alliance and joins the British. That was because the British offered the Italians Istria and Dalmatia in exchange of this support during the war. So these are the newspapers where everyone is declaring the war to the other one. This is once again the map. And this first war was a trench warfare, was began, and was also the development of submarines, was also the development of aviation, especially of the air forces. And this what happened. You see, the German Empire arrived to this red line, and there it stopped. And there it stopped. There was no movement at all. They stayed over there. Was a lot of these people died because of illness. Some others also they were in very bad situation there. And in 1917, 1 year before ending the war, there was the Bolshevik Revolution, and this is the image of the revolution in a paint by Kustodiev, and the killing of all the monarchs, the Tsar and all his family. All of this is the room and the destruction, the brutal way they killed these people. And I have this postcard because they were cousins. The King of England and the Tsar were cousins, but the King of England, the story nowadays, the documents that are seeing light, shows that he could help his cousin, but he was told not to do it. So in the history it remains that the English monarchs could help the Russian Tsar and his family. Anyway, Russia goes away because they had a different political organization, and the United States enters. When the United States enters, there was very little to do. It was new blood, new people. They were not tired, and they were very far away. They were not a military objective, so they decided really the war. In this war, there was a Venezuelan lieutenant that, as he was of German descent, he emigrated to Hamburg at the age of 12. And he was a volunteer, became a pilot, and he has 7 or 8 kills, we say it in English, 7 or 8 victories against another planes. He was selected to join the squadron of von Richthofen, that was the Red Baron, and he competed against the best military pilots in the world, including Goering, where he also fought in the same group that did Goering. Then at the end of the war, he returned to Venezuela. His father was German, his mother was Venezuelan. I am related to Carlos Meyer Baldó, a little bit far away, but I'm related to him through my mother's family, through my Venezuelan family, not through the German family, because of his mother. Baldó was related with the Velasco that was my grandmother. So he returned to Venezuela, and he was personal friend of the son of the dictator, exemplary flight instructor, and co-founder of the Venezuelan Air Force. While performing over Maracay certain maneuvers, the aircraft failed and crashed in 1933. Here you have the Fokker, which here you see Lieutenant Karl Meyer. He's during the First War, and he also flight the Albatros DV. During the war, these were German planes. Well, Hitler and Goering, his last commander in the Luftwaffe, sent a delegation to his funeral, headed by Baron von Rittner. The Venezuelan Air Force has a Medal of Merit called Lieutenant Carlos Meyer Baldó that is named after him. I have the honor of have this medal, and double honor because as I told you before, was related to him, and this is a medal that is very much wanted by the personnel because it's very hard to give it. It's not a lot of people has this medal. It's easier to get the Air Force Cross than to get this medal of Carlos Meyer Baldó. This is the plane, not exactly the plane, the same model. Here we have it in Wisconsin Museum, that he was trying to do certain maneuvers over Maracay, Venezuela, when the machine couldn't do them, and he killed himself. Returning to the war was, as I told you before, trench warfare. The development of chemical weapons were terrible, really terrible. Of submarines, of aviation. It means this war meant the loss of 9 million soldiers, 7 million civilians, and 6 million casualties from famine and disease. It meant also the end of four empires, the German, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, and the Russian. And there were once again new borders. It came a Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was really the great responsible that very few years later Europe was going to be once again in another world war. Here you have we say it in Spanish here, sorry, this is a victory walk after the war celebration. You see in New York, this is the popular building called the Flatiron. And sorry, this is in Spanish. We go back to the Treaty of Versailles, and as I told you, they were so hard the punities, the punition of Germany, that they were living really in a situation, in a very difficult situation. There was not even food, there was nothing, they couldn't dress themselves. And that's what happened then. When you have a leader that say, I'm not going to pay anymore these punishments that Europe has done, I'm going to develop a military industry, it became what it became afterwards. So here we are, the new frontiers. The new frontiers after 1923, because there were a lot of movement and discussions, and here we arrive to the first Yugoslavia. You see, the first Yugoslavia over here. What happened is that the British had offered the Italians Istria and had offered the Serbians Dalmatia. So, when they're all sitting in the table of victories, the Italians asked for Istria and Dalmatia. But they said, well, we offered also Istria and Dalmatia to the Serbians. So they decided to give Istria to the Italians, which they didn't like, and Dalmatia to the Serbians. So Istria became part of Italy, and Dalmatia became part of this kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovens. And this is very important. After 13 centuries of history, Croatia loses its legal and state identity. This kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovens, I said, was a trap. Sorry once again. That meant peoples with unequal economic resources and serious injustice. The Serbs always got the best of it. So this produced a popular discontent and the desire to found an independent republic, or independent republics in plural. The response of the monarchy was brutal repression. And we arrived to the top to the 1928, where there was an assassination and death of Stjepan Radic, president of the Croatian Republican Peasant Party, which was succeeded by another leader, Maček, in the same Croatian Republican Peasant Party. Who was Radic? Who was Maček? And what came after this? Radic was like a Mahatma Gandhi Croatian. It's better to see. He was a very peaceful politician and was leader, a great leader of Croatia. He studied law in Zagreb and Prague, and in 1904 organized his party, the Croatian Peasant Party. He was really very pacifist and very humanist guy. But he had a great force, an overwhelming force, incredible. A lot of people followed him. Well, in the assembly, in the National Assembly in Belgrade, this politician was killed. 2 other Croatian deputies died in the attack. The attack made by a guy with a gun, with a handgun, and he pointed his gun and shot towards 4 Croatian deputies. 3 of them died. The other one survived. One had a limitation, of course. This was known that was instigated by King Alexander. King Alexander was the king that he belonged to a Serbian monarchy house. So it's very interesting to say this, because when I say action instigated by King Alexander, the guy that made these shots 2 months later was just walking around and laughing about all these things. This is really something incredibly evil. 1927, King Alexander decided to change the name to Yugoslavia, and the repression worsened. So, in 1934, he traveled to Marseille. He traveled to south of France, and he was also murdered. In this case, was in hands of Macedonian patriots that wanted also to separate from this kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. And this was really a logistical participation of the Croatian movement Ustaša. In the meantime, in Venezuela, President General Gomez, dictator, of course he was president for a way to see, but was a dictator really, laid the foundations of the modern state, and he canceled the nation's debts. Of course, he could cancel it easily because of the new, the enormous quantity of money that was getting inside the country because of the oil business. He oversaw important public works, and he created the Air Force and airlines, the Linea Aeropostal, the civil airlines. And in 1936, from Istria once again, but this from Pula, my father, this was his name, he was a football or soccer player in Pula in 1922. Here is his image. Under Italian annexation. Here he played in Italy in the Perugia, where they won he was at the same time the mister, at the same time he was a player. They won the second division championship, And he was then taken into the great Genoa. The great Genoa team was in those moments the team that had more Italian championships. But in 1936, he decides to come to America. He couldn't make it anymore. They had a lot of situations because of lesions, and he was acquired by the Dos Caminos Sport Club. The Dos Caminos had never won anything, and since the moment he arrived, during all these years, he was champions, or he was runners-up, or second position during these years. You see, these are 11 years, and let us say 10 years, 6 years champions, and 4 years seconds. Here's an image of then President Medina giving the cup to these players. I knew all these guys since I was a kid. And here's the Dos Caminos. Here's my father also there. And I bring this because my father was the first mister of the national team, of the national football team of Venezuela. Because he was so successful with the Dos Caminos, he was selected to make the first vino tinto, as we called it, because of the colors of red wine. The color of the uniform is the red wine color. And we're living also in Spain the civil war between 1936 and 39. Was terrible war also, approximately 1 million deaths. Some historians say that not so many. There was about 700,000, more or less. It's horrible. It was meant brother against brother, father against son, etc. Well, if you doubt about it, you can read the novel, the Hemingway's novel, For Whom the Bells Toll. There's also a film, a very old film, but the novel always is better than a film. This was a prelude to the World War II. It meant the intervention of foreign powers because both parts were receiving help from outside. There were the Republicans, or calling the Reds also, were receiving help from Russia, and Franco was receiving help from Germany and Italy. Well, at the end, finally, we had a devastated country plunged into misery. But in 1939, Franco won the war, and he kept that is going to be very interesting. He didn't want to get onto the World War. He was very clever from that point of view. And here we have the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. In the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, this was the first Yugoslavia, monarchy. And you see, look at this map over here. Because these were Croatians. And here's the figure of Maciek. Remember that he got in charge of the party at the death of Radic, and he succeeded him as a leader. He was not so great leader, but he was a great worker. He demanded a new constitution. So the king didn't like it. He refused and declared a royal dictatorship. He was arrested twice and convicted of treason, released upon the king's death in 1934. Some people say that if it wouldn't be the king's death, he would be killed. 1939, he reached his goal. He finally got the Banovina. The Banovina was a viceroy, an independent viceroy. But we were almost beginning of the World War. So this autonomy in the Banovina is going to last for 20 months. He twice rejected the German offer to create a Croatian state under German tutelage. He asked his supporters to back Pavelić then. Pavelić was Ustasha, remembers those that helped the Macedonian patriots in the killing of the King Alexander. In October 1941, he was arrested again, and at the end of the war, he traveled to France and then to the USA, where he died in 1964. So these were the limits or the borders of this Banovina autonomous viceroyalty inside the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. But it lasted only 20 years because the war began. Germany invades Poland. So the situation in 1941, a year and a half afterwards, is this one. Look at all the situation in Europe in blue, controlled by the Germans. In 1931, England puts pressure on Prince Paul. Why? Who is Prince Paul? Prince Paul was a nephew of King Alexander. He had several sons, King Alexander, but children were too young. So Prince Paul was even nominated as a king. Not at the beginning, but at the end he was nominated as a king, maybe for a few days or 1 month, and he flew then away to England. You'll see why. Then Croatia achieves international autonomy, and Paul decided to join the Germans and the Italians. This didn't like it to the British. So, sponsored by England, there was a coup d'etat by the Serbian officers, and Germany does not accept this coup. Invaded, and when they invaded, they had to fight. We have to find someone, some Croatian leader, to lead this new country that, of course, is going to be with us in the war. So they offered this head of state to Maciek, but Maciek didn't want it. He declined twice. So they offered to Ante Pavelić, it was a leader to Ustasha, and of course, there was always an interest of having back a Croatia, an independent state, and Pavelić accepted. And this is the situation. Look at the covenant and the Comintern covenant. This covenant was against, of course, against communism. Look, all Europe was part, and partly here, this was partly, it was a covenant against the expansion of the communism, of the Soviet communism here. Who was Pavelić? This is very important to see, because there are so many things that people talk about Pavelić. He was a prominent lawyer, member of the Yugoslav parliament when Radić was killed. So, when Radić was killed, he declared publicly his beliefs, and he had to fly away to Italy because he was also taken into trial in absence and condemned to death. So he had to fly away. He was arrested after the assassination of King Alexander because his organization, Ustasha, participated as a logistical support to the Macedonians that were the material authors. In 1941, Croatia is declared independent, and Maciek declines to lead it, so Pavelić is appointed dictator, and he remains allied to the Axis powers until the end of the war. This is very important, because in the end of the war, when the Red Army was advancing, he had even the offer of Stalin that he could remain there, just change side, come with us, and you'll remain, you'll stay there. He didn't want to. He wanted to be sincere, so he immigrates to Argentina, and both Tito's communists and the Serbian monarchists sent agents to kill him. Well, he's shot in the back in 1957, and he disappears. Lately, he's to be found in Madrid, where he died from the wounds, from the consequences of that shot in the back. And he dies in 1959. Here his family, he lived in Spain for this time, and here he's still his tomb in Spain also. It's always filled with flowers. A very interesting situation in Croatia. Croatia included Bosnia once again, so they had a lot of soldiers that were Islamic. Here we see the Jerusalem Mufti, just I don't know how to say it, passing these troops, these Islamic troops. And here, this is a photograph. I have several of the photographs. You see, there's a lot of persons that they don't know that the Germans in the north of Africa, with Rommel, there were a lot of troops and officers colored. This is a case, he's just joking with the Germans around, because people think that the Germans, well, anti-colored people, the Nazis. That's also untrue. There were a lot of them that changed side, especially were French, that changed side when the Germans entered France, because they disliked the French. They were colonies, and they changed side, and they came to fight with the Germans. So that's why I have this photo here. And talking about Pavelic, so many things are said, mostly nonsense, mostly really nonsense. Three important facts that historians little talk about. Three things that Pavelic did. A, was forbidding the creation of Nazi and fascist parties in Croatia. He said, we don't need Nazi and fascist parties. We have our party. It's called Ustaša. B, permitted the founding, or he found the Croatian Orthodox Church. There wasn't one. So, as there were also Serbs in this republic that were Orthodox, and a Croatian could also be Orthodox. It's rare, but it happens. He can change religion, and you can be an Orthodox. So he permitted the founding of the Croatian Orthodox Church, and finally he created a special law, in my opinion, a very silly law that helped Jews to survive. Why I say it was a little bit silly, the law said that a Jew that did a good work for his country, he was cleared, his blood was cleared up, and he was not anymore dangerous or Jewish. How can we explain that? He was completely surrounded by the SS, and he was helping as far as he could. Not. Why? How can this be explained? Well, now it's known that his wife was Jewish. His wife was converted into Catholicism, but her mother was Jewish. So there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. This is absolutely demonstrated. See, here we see, this is the government, the independent state of Croatia. You see? Always here in, remember, we kept the shadow in gray, what is now Croatia. That's why this becomes a little bit dark, because this is nowadays old Croatia. And then in 1941, we arrived to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And the speech of infamy, the famous speech of Roosevelt, that declares war to the Axis. This will take, into years later, into what we can consider definitive situation of the war. Maybe it was not so. In my opinion, the war was already decided in the Stalingrad failed occupation. When the Germans failed the occupation of Stalingrad, really the war was lost for Germans, for the Axis, and was win for the other side. This is the end. It's very difficult to see this slide, but it was the end, and the new frontiers, the new of this, and the final horrible decision of sending these atomic bombs into Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And Japanese, of course, surrenders. There was no way. And now we talk about the direct and indirect casualties. Well, 240,000 between both of them. Why didn't Japan surrender after Hiroshima? That's a good question. Why did they have to wait for the second atomic bomb when they saw already the first one? Now it's known that they also had the development of this atomic bomb and had also date to throw this bomb into San Francisco. But they didn't have time. When they saw that the second bomb arrived very few time later, and with the menace that the third one was going to Tokyo, they decided to surrender. And this is the situation of the independent state of Croatia between 1941 and 1945. In Venezuela, in the meantime, it's going to be the first types of democracy. And paradoxically, these two great leaders, democratic leaders, were military leaders, López Contreras and Medina. In the meantime, we are arriving to the end of the war, and we are arriving to the end of this chapter. Only like a previews for the next chapter. Already in 1941, Croatian resistance were reunited against the Axis, and the Communist Party grows stronger on the figure of Tito. Tito, we'll talk about it, I think, in the next chapter. At the end of the war, with the help of Stalin and Churchill, he transformed Yugoslavia into a federation and another totalitarian and communist country. This is to be continued. So thank you once again for joining. And if you want to subscribe or give your opinion, you are invited to do so. Thank you very much. See you soon.